Hello, I'm Ciara Daly, and this is Unite and Conquer, a new online series exploring the ways in which the Irish food and drink industry can positively impact people, planet, and profit. Each week, I speak with industry experts to uncover the opportunities which exist for food and drink businesses to implement green skills throughout their systems, so they can not only improve their own business operations, but the experience and impact they have on the people and environment around them too. Joining me today to discuss the topic of food and design is food system strategist Lara Hanlon. Lara is the founder of Portion Collaborative, a food systems design agency on a mission to create new and better ways for people to understand food. Prior to launching Portion Collaborative, Lara worked as a senior designer with IBM in both Ireland and New York, where she supported global teams to envision and advance design practices, transform corporate culture, and deliver market differentiated outcomes. Included on her long list of achievements are her completion of a sustainable business strategy program with Harvard Business Online School, certification in food and sustainability at the European Institute of Innovation and Sustainability, as well as the role she played in the conceivement of Entomo, a research project that used strategies and methodologies to encourage Western society to embrace insects as a sustainable food source. In 2017, Lara delivered a TED Talk on this research. But the accolades do not end there. Lara co-delivered Ireland's first postgrad design thinking course at Dún Laoghaire Institute of Art and Design and Technology. She has held lecturing positions in graphic design, interaction design, and universal design, and has delivered guest lectures to the School of Visual Arts New York and Temple University Philadelphia. She is an active contributor to the design community at large and a committee member at 100 Archive, as well as a mentor for the Big Idea. Her design work has been exhibited, featured, and published by Milan Design Week, Fast Company, and Silicon Republic, to name just a few. I am tired just reading out all of those accomplishments, Lara. So where you get the energy to actually achieve them, I do not know, but I am very grateful that you have found the time to join me today. So welcome.
Thank you, Ciara. Yeah, thanks so much for the lovely introduction there. Catch your breath. I apologize for that. But yeah, no, I'm delighted to be here and I'm really looking forward to the conversation.
Great. Well, it was a really, really interesting, like looking into what it is that you do. You're obviously someone who is very accomplished. But what I'd love for you to expand on a little, if you don't mind, is how somebody actually becomes a food systems strategist. What is the journey leading up to that? And then, in layman terms, if you could, what does the work of a food system strategist actually entail?
Yeah, so I love this question because there is no answer. I'll
Great.
tell you, yeah, in a way, okay. So I started as a designer, right? So my background is formally trained as a visual communications designer, right? So that's communicating ideas through visual means. So really, people might know it as graphic design. Um, and over the years, I started to work more on using design within business. So looking at, can we use kind of creative design methods and strategies to maybe transform business or do business in different ways, and looking at strategy and processes and operations within business, and taking a lot of those fundamental design trainings and strategies and applying them in that scenario. So over the years, I became more of a design strategist, right? So that's kind of like, how are we going to move forward and do the thing we want to do, but maybe through a different way, more creative or design-led approach, right? As opposed to the traditional sort of business innovation sort of approach. So that's kind of, I ended up being, I suppose, a design strategist. And then over the last number of years, I started pursuing food and sustainability and sustainable business strategy. And within that kind of realm of understanding our food systems, taking on some education around our food systems and sustainability, I kind of saw a lot of parallels there, and taking then my training on both sides of design and food systems. That's really where food systems food system strategy came from. So that's my journey. but other people would arrive at that very differently, right? You don't have to be a designer to be a food systems strategist, but that was my path to this point. So really it's kind of looking at, where are we today? Where do we want to get to? What's the vision, and how are we going to get there?
Yeah.
And I just happen to be a designer underneath all that.
Amazing. It's so interesting to hear that kind of background of how you get to that. So I suppose the overarching purpose of Unite and Conquer is to look at the different ways that food and drink businesses can improve the industry, which is obviously something that you're doing. I'm particularly interested in looking at the topics we cover through a green lens. And I know that's a mission that's shared by Portion Collaborative, because on your website, you ask the question, how can we create a better future where food is more sustainable, enjoyable, and equitable for all? So in 2002, there was a record 349 million people across 79 countries facing acute food insecurity. And that was up 287 million in 2021, according to the World Food Programme. So the question that you're asking there is really, really pertinent. Food access isn't a problem that we have time to twiddle our thumbs on. It's not something, that we can sit around having cups of tea and wait for the right solution to come out. It's something that essentially just needs to be solved yesterday. And you're obviously somebody who is a bit of an expert in this area. So I'd love for you to expand on your thoughts and your knowledge around the answer to your own question. How can we create a better food future? And in terms of at home here in Ireland, what really can the people of one small island actually do to contribute to it?
Yeah, so it's a massive question, right? And it's a challenge, it's a provocation to everyone, because actually food is a concern for every single person on this planet. And I think, if we think about the things that help us survive, oxygen and water and food, right? It's a fundamental part of our being. And so, I'm very lucky that, I have my own kitchen. I can access whatever food I want from anywhere in the world, really, and I can cook up any meal, any part of the day, and I don't have to think twice about that. But the reality is that so many people in Ireland, in Europe, across the world are just, hungry. They don't have access. They live in places of conflict. Climate crisis is impacting crop growth. And it's, inequality from a political point of view as well is blocking people. It's creating these barriers for people to access food, right? And for something that is so fundamental to who we are as humans, personally, I don't think that that's right. Okay, it just doesn't sit with me. And I think something needs to change, right? I think why is food so competitive? Why is food access so difficult? And so there's a bit of a sort of, maybe it's altruistic or a part of activism within me that wants to kind of help, answer that question or solve that problem to some degree. Now, again, it's a massive, massive problem. Our food systems are incredibly complex. There are a lot of businesses who, look to their operations to gain profit. Some of the biggest companies in the world are food businesses. So it's a very difficult space to start to unpick, right? It's political, it's socioeconomic. So all of these things that kind of, drive society is pertaining to food and the success and the challenges of food systems. But what can we do about it? I think we can start at the smallest level, right? I think there are so many things that we can do. We can start to raise awareness about where our food comes from. Why should we eat certain foods and maybe not eat other kind of foods, right? Health and nutrition is probably the one that people are more familiar with. But also when we do think about, okay, where our food comes from, who are the farmers? What are their working conditions? Are they getting paid? Are we supporting deforestation? These kind of bigger questions, I think there is a role for me to ask those questions and help others to ask those questions. And ideally, give some better solutions to the kind of scenarios where it's not so good, right? And so I think I'm trying to do that through my work. And that could be helping businesses to say, hey, look, I'd like my business to be more sustainable or ethical. Or it might be like, actually, a business has an amazing product and it's going to help their consumers, but consumers don't really know about it. They can't access it. So is there a way for me to kind of connect those two, right, through design? And that could be through, who knows, an app, a service. I don't know, but it's really about, what are the good things that are happening and how do we get that out into the world?
Yeah. I love that, and I absolutely agree with everything you've said there. We were chatting before we came on, and we just spoke a little bit about how it's important to both of us in our work that we don't just preach. It's very easy to just tell businesses and other people how to run their business, how to spend their money. But we also are people who kind of bring those values into our own business. And I mean, the fact that you base your very, very business around those key points is in and of itself kind of a reflection of how you really value people and planet as much as profit within your business. Are there any kind of other ways that you are bringing that into what you do with your work?
Yeah. So this idea of people, planet, and profit actually is really interesting to me because fundamentally, like a lot of my training and what I teach is based on this framework called design thinking. You may or may not have heard of it, but it's essentially built on this very basic principle that if you create something that intersects something that's feasible, so can you pay for it? Is it cheap to produce? Something that's viable, so is it going to work? Is it going to survive into the future? And something that's desirable. Do people actually want it, right? If you can get to something at the intersection of those three things, you're going to have great success, right? So that's the kind of very basic principle of design thinking. And you do that through a range of different methods. For me, over the last, I would say, certainly 2 years, I started to look at that and say, you know what? That's all well and good, but putting humans, people, at the center of certainly what I do as a designer, and thinking about strategically, are we only serving the people, so that making something desirable and then making sure it's costly and it's going to last and it's going to create profit? I started to get a bit uncomfortable with that because nowhere in that are we actually saying, well, what's the damage or implications to the environment or other living beings or nature, right? So actually I've started to kind of evolve a little bit of that principle for my own self. And I start to kind of look at people, planet, and business less so about profit, because I think we need to move away from this idea of profit's the only metric of success for businesses. I think at the end of the day, yes, absolutely, businesses have to, earn money. They have to make a profit. They have to pay the bottom line. I'm not taking away from that. We need to get to that point. But I think beyond that, wouldn't it be great if we could also say, you know what, we're also creating amazing working conditions for our workers. We're also reducing our carbon footprint. And that if the world, certainly the capitalist world, was to look at that and say, that's our metric of success. And it's serving people, and it's serving planet, and it's serving business. That's kind of the sort of trifecta of, what I aim to sort of at least work towards. I think that's my, I suppose, process and value system from the way I work.
I really love that, because profit, it does have that sort of representation of constant growth, and not every business, that's not a goal that I have. I have certain goals, but not at the risk of my health, my mental well-being, my physical well-being.
Right.
And there's a certain, I really, really love that. It's a very lovely replacement for profit. We just need to business. We need to get the 3 Ps.
Yeah. Have the profit, but do more.
No, I love that. That's definitely an ethos I share. So thank you so much for helping me kind of put that into words. In terms of your own work that you have done since you have been back in Ireland, since you've been working within the Irish food and drink industry. I know that you don't necessarily only work with food and drink businesses, you kind of work with all aspects that affect the industry. But because obviously the audience here is primarily food and drink businesses, what would you see as being the biggest barrier that they are facing when it comes to implementing these sort of system changes? And what advice would you give them in overcoming that barrier? Now, it doesn't have to be the full list, but
Sure.
one example would be
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. I think, I mean, the obvious one is budget and time. So I
Okay.
think actually, and Portion Collaborative is less than a year old, right?
Yeah.
But from the conversations I've had with people in food and drinks industry, I think the need and the want and the interest to maybe instill more sustainable practices or create more circular products, I
Yeah.
think it's there, and
It
I think
absolutely is.
a lot of business leaders, they're not blind to the reality of the situation. They know that like we need to do more and we need to make progress on the sustainability front. So I think the interest and the need and the want is there, but I think when it comes to operating your business, it's really hard. And it's hard to, back to our previous conversation around profit, it's really hard to make profit, right, in food. It's an
Yeah.
incredibly cutthroat industry. And if we look at kind of small businesses or SMEs, it's very, very difficult for them to actually start to make any sort of profit, never mind just, baseline. With the competition from bigger organizations, bigger companies. So I think the reality is it's kind of, for a lot of food and drinks businesses, they're trying to do what they can and survive.
Yeah.
And they have this nice to have dream of like, wouldn't it be great to do that? But they might not have the budget or time or energy to start to implement those things. And what I would really say is, if you could carve out a small bit of money and time to just start to scratch the surface, it actually will help in the long run. I think if we can actually invest more in those kind of system level changes earlier, the better, right? And it does take time. I think it takes time to see the change, but it will happen, and it has happened for many organizations out there. So I think it's a challenge, and it's really hard to justify that when you're, trying to just pay your workers wages and make ends meet in many cases. But that will be the biggest barrier, I think. And then I think just like a one for myself, it's kind of trying to educate, I suppose, food and drinks businesses the value of things like design or systems thinking, because food systems is so complex. If you take someone in food manufacturing, for example, versus retail, they live in their own little world, and it's a very big world, but they do interact with each other and they do impact one another. And so getting companies to think systemically and systematically is a challenge, and sometimes it's getting them to understand the value of doing that, and through maybe design and creative practices. That's also something that certainly I'm trying to, I suppose, educate, because historically the food sector hasn't looked to, I suppose, design and creative services for that kind of work, right? It's been less focused on design and creative services and more on traditional business and food development, right? So yeah, they would be kind of the top challenges, I suppose.
Yeah, time is I think across the board when it comes to like a small business owner in general, but most definitely with those within the food and drink industry, time is the biggest asset anybody has.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but again, to reiterate, or just to follow up on what you said about, creating that value, there definitely, or you may not kind of understand where the value comes in the here and now, but actually I was reading during the week that it was 69% of consumers were actually willing and interested in buying products that are more like food and drink products that are more sustainably
Yep.
produced. So by putting that investment in now rather than later when everybody's doing it, it has taken effort and probably blood, sweat, and tears, but you've given yourself an advantage in the long run. And it's about taking
Yes.
that kind of top down look into your business. It's something I actually spoke about with Jacinta last week in terms of the education. And it has that kind of knock on effect of implementing or improving some of your own systems and in the long term, again, saving you some money. So that's brilliant. You are obviously someone who is very skilled and knowledgeable in this area. If a business wanted to reach out to you for support, what is the best way that you would be able to support them?
Yeah. Look, I think it all starts with a conversation. I think what I do is pretty broad, and it's different for every single individual business, small, large. It's very different. So I think the best way to support is actually finding out what is your challenge.
Yeah.
Where do you want to go? Like, what's your vision? What's the area that you're operating in, and then figuring out from there, okay, what could we do? And so I think that's what I love about my work, is that there's no real like one fits all kind of answer. And it really is sort of up to where you're at in your own timeline, right? And what you want to achieve, how big your company is or how small. So it's really about a conversation, and I think looking at it from a kind of empathetic point of view, and like, okay, well, what can we do together and collaboratively? Hence why I call my business Portion Collaborative. It's a conversation, it's a collaboration. So that's the best way of kind of getting started, I suppose.
Magnificent. And to start that conversation, how do people get in touch?
Yeah, so it's Lara at portion-collab.com, or if you go to portion-collab.com, you'll find my contact details there, or Instagram, Lara_Hanlon, and Portion Collab.
And your Instagram is great, actually, because you post really, really nice kind of snippets of information that are very, very interesting and very easy to take in. I use them as my little food education.
That's good
forum.
to know. Good to know. Yeah, I suppose that's actually like, it's part of the educational aspect, I suppose, of what I want to do, is raising awareness. So I'm glad to hear. That's good. Good feedback.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, I'll be sure to put all your contact details and all the information about the work you do in the show notes. But until then, I would like to say thank you for joining me. I really, really, really enjoyed this chat, and I do appreciate you giving me your time. Until next week, everyone, that has been Lara Hanlon from Portion Collaborative.